Hello, movie maniacs, and welcome to More Movies Weekly number 21.
So I think we're gonna...
You're 21. You're 21.
This is the podcast where we like to talk about movies, films, cinema, what's what, what's hot, and what's not. My name's Greg Fisher. This legend sitting next to me is Dave Roberts. How you doing, Dave?
I'm very well, sir. Very well. How are you?
I'm very well also. Thank you very much. Well, we've got loads to talk about. The agenda is stacked high, so let's get straight into the podcast without further ado.
And so, without further ado...
So, this week we have been watching a brand new film starring Nicolas Cage. This film is called Pig. That's it. That's all it's called, Pig. I didn't know what to expect. You didn't know what to expect. It's just a film with Nicolas Cage looking a bit gnarly, looking a little bit disheveled. So this is directed by someone called Michael Sarnoski. It's his debut film. He's not done a feature film before, and he's landed Nicolas Cage for the lead role. I mean, you must be good if your debut film stars Nicolas Cage in this day and age. Now, Nicolas Cage, it can go either way or any way or every way with Nicolas Cage. Usually he's full of zaniness and craziness, and his films are like, you know, over the top sometimes, a little bit crazy, often very entertaining.
L-M-N-O-P, Q-R-S-T-U-V-W-X-Y-Z! Huh?
And when I first seen the poster for this film, Dave, I thought, oh my God, this is a man with a pig. And from what I can gather, the pig gets abducted or kidnapped, and he is going to go on a kill crazy rampage and cut some heads off, make them roll, take some names, kick some ass, and get his pig back. This is what it looks like. I couldn't have been more wrong. This is not that sort of film. This is an introspective film. It is a philosophical film. It's an emotional film. It's quiet. It's unassuming. It lets you do all the work. It just does its thing. It's a really quite singular drama in its way. I've never seen anything like it before, especially coming out of America. I was completely fucking blown away by this film, man. This is a fucking great movie. Over to you.
That's the tagline we should just put up. This is a fucking great movie.
Well, it is. Well, it really is.
It's an astonishing film. I mean, exactly that. You know, you kind of what your expectation going in with it being Nicolas Cage, and even the first 30 minutes of the film, you keep on expecting, okay, it's going to turn into the revenge film now. You know, we're waiting for that moment, really, and it never comes. And instead, it's very very peculiar, very unique in the way that it unfolds the story. It's not there's no twists going on here. It's not going to hammer you over the head with plot or exposition, or it's not even going to explain a lot of things. It's just a man on a journey, and what happens. It unfolds in front of you, and you've got to piece it together, really, in a way, but not in a kind of, oh, this is a really complicated thing. It's just you
exactly
discovering with him. You know?
There was nothing convoluted about it, and it wasn't the kind of film that's like, oh, you've got to really concentrate, and it's an intellectual film. No, none of that. But none of the other stuff either. I mean, in my notes here, the first thing I wrote, because I always make notes when we go through these films, and it's like, the first thing I wrote was, I don't even know what I'm in for, because I didn't even watch the trailer. I just looked at that poster and I looked at the thing and thought, and made my assumptions, and I didn't know what I was in for. But that couldn't have been more right, because taking that to the next level, I just was not expecting. Every 10 minutes or so it went on. Like you said, at first I was expecting he's going to load the shotgun and he's going to go out of that. Because, just to set it up for people a little bit, he is like this kind of, disheveled guy who lives in the woods. He collects truffles with his truffle pig. And obviously truffles are sort of delicacy. They're worth a lot of money. You can make money that way. It's a good business, finding truffles. Pigs famously are very good at snuffing them out with their snouts, and you find the truffles, great. Then his pig gets kidnapped, and he spends the rest of the movie trying to get his pig back. Now, this is the setup. You don't really need to say any more than that. But like I said, you expect the shotgun to be loaded. He's going to go out. He's going to find these creeps that kidnapped his pig, and he's going to dispatch them one by one in, a kind of revenge style movie, something like Mandy or something, that he's done a hell of a lot of times. That's like, yeah, it's going to be a crazy Nicolas Cage piece, but that's not what happens. Like you said, he does go on a journey, but it's completely not what you expect. It's so it's quite a dark film. And I say that not just in theme and tone, but visually is quite dark. A lot of the stuff takes place at night. Not all of it, of course, but a lot of it does. We're in the Pacific Northwest. We're in Oregon. He goes to Portland at one point, looking for this pig. It's just peculiar, man. This is not your typical American film, which is great, because how many times do we sit here each week saying, get some fresh ideas, Hollywood, all these sequels, remakes, rehashes is all bullshit. But then you get a jewel like this, again, a truffle. It is a truffle in itself. It's in the middle of the dirt and the mud, and you dig down and you find this incredible
gem of a
piece
movie.
of work. It is a gem. It is an absolute gem.
Well, I think that's it. It's such an interesting film. The visually, of course, it's very interesting. It's that kind of it is that indie look, but it's done nicely. It's that desaturated palette, that wide look, really, and it's done very, very well.
Beautiful cinematography.
This is Nicolas Cage reminding us how good an actor he is. This is him back to top level performance. It's not an
less is more, isn't it? It's one of those.
Less is more,
because you expect
he
him
doesn't
to
do
the
much.
Crazy Nicolas Cage, and he doesn't. He hardly has any lines. He's very quiet. No. His character is very taciturn. Is very sort of subdued. You don't really, everything that's revealed about him is revealed through the other characters. Who he is, what he was, how whatever. It's all done quiet through very clever exposition. I mean, that's how you do exposition. You do it subtly. You do it through gradually, and you do it through the other characters.
That's it. It's quiet and unassuming and very restrained. You feel like he does. He's keeping it all in, and nothing is let go.
No.
But then layers are peeled off as you you visit a new place. A little bit more of the story is unfolded, and that's the what was interesting about saying about the story unfolding. That it's not like they go to a new place and it's here's the twist and this happened.
No, it goes to a new place. It reveals a bit more, and that makes you go, "What the fuck is going on in this?" It's like what that old saying, enigma wrapped in a riddle. It's one of those. It's like the more you find out, the less you know.
It's a mystery wrapped in a riddle inside an enigma.
We also have to give props to his co-star Alex Wolff. Is it as Amir? I thought he was brilliant.
He was absolutely fantastic. The moment I saw him on screen, I was like, okay. And you kind of start with a character who's a bit of a prick, and by the end of it, you really feel really deeply for him, and his performance is superb. I've not really known much about him as an actor.
No, not. I don't think I've seen him before.
He apparently started on Nickelodeon a few years ago. So it's probably about 10, 15 years ago now. He was in Hereditary, and he's in the Jumanji films.
Oh, yeah, he's the son in Hereditary.
Well, there we go.
Yeah, totally.
But I couldn't remember him from Jumanji, which I've seen, and so he's not made much of a splash as so far.
No, he does feature quite. And now I realise it's him from Hereditary. It's like, of course, he's quite. You haven't seen that yet. You got to watch that.
No, I still got to watch that. But he really stands out here.
He does. And, he does. It's a great role for him. Great role.
It's terrific. He's basically the ambitious kid who's trying to impress his father, essentially, in the core of it.
Yeah.
But no one obviously takes him very seriously because he's a young lad, and he just does it so well. He's apparently in that new film Old as well.
Yeah, I haven't seen that
which
yet.
I'm looking forward to seeing.
Sure.
So he's a young actor. Just quite exciting to see what he does next.
Yeah, absolutely. I will be keeping an eye on him, especially after this film, because I thought he was great in it. And it's a role where if you miscast it, it could blow the movie. This is the kind of film that I'm in it for, one that you just don't know what to expect. You don't know what's going to happen from one minute to the other. All the preconceptions you had about it are completely wrong.
Yeah.
And you just end up being pleasantly surprised in a completely different way than you expected. And by the end, I felt completely satisfied, like I'd had a great meal.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. There's a food theme going on. Obviously, you've got the truffles. It's called Pig in itself, and each chapter there's three. It's broken up into three acts as a standard thing. But each one, part one, it's like there's a little menu.
Yeah,
it's like the starter, the main course, and almost like the dessert at the end. Almost, But that's the way they did it, and that in itself is strange because you don't find out. I mean, one of the reveals is that he's a chef. That's not going to spoil anything for anyone,
No.
But Nicolas Cage's character prior to the events of the movie, like a decade or so before, he's this renowned chef. So there's this theme of food going on and goes throughout the movie. Which in itself brings some brilliant scenes up. We talked earlier about that scene where they go to the restaurant, which is like, fine dining, super cuisine, almost like what we would call over here a Ponzi restaurant, where you go and spell.
It's a Ponzi restaurant, yeah.
100 quid each just to eat a soup's on a little, hors d'oeuvres.
Tiny little thing in the middle of a plate.
But it's all about the concept. He even says to him, what is the concept here? And there was moments I was burst out laughing because it was so funny. You don't expect it to be hilarious, but it is. And then I was just like, wow. And by that point, by that scene, I was really enjoying myself, really enjoying the film then.
That whole scene, it was so well written.
Yeah.
And for me, that was the scene of the film because it really deconstructs the philosophy that they're talking about, really. Yeah. It's really sitting there going,
nobody cares about you. Why are you doing it? You don't even care about what you're doing. Why are you doing it? Oh, it was just brilliant.
It's like he's saying it to us as the viewer.
And it's like his character saying it to himself, and he's saying it to Amir. Really it was very much a Portland film. If you've ever seen Portlandia, the comedy series from a few years ago, and just that kind of general, it's one of those places in the United States that's like, it's got its own thing. They've got quite a similar climate to us because they're so far up there. It's, it rains a lot and it's the grey skies and stuff like this and, can be cold. And I thought, this is got atmosphere. This is a film with atmosphere.
Atmosphere.
I love a movie with a great atmosphere.
What an atmosphere. I love a party with a happy atmosphere.
The main crux of the film is that you find out early on he lost his wife, and that's one of the stories that unfolds throughout it. And really, the loss of the pig is an allegory for the loss of his wife. And so the thematic structure of the film is really about grief.
It is about grief. It is completely about grief and loss and grief management.
And dealing with it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And anyone who appreciates it will appreciate this. It's a terrifically well written, terrifically performed, amazingly put together, packed with philosophical and metaphorical ideas.
Yeah.
It really asks you a lot of questions. It does nothing by the book.
No.
It's just really great, fresh film, as you say, about, we get bored sometimes of some of the films and go, well, it's the same old thing. And then
something like this comes along and you love it.
That's it.
So there we go. We'll be keeping an eye on Michael Sarnoski, and great to see Nicolas Cage back in a movie like this. I love the choices he makes. I like the fact that he does these films because he does do a lot of junk as well. He has done over the years. He's always great in them, and he's always entertaining to watch, even in stuff like National Treasure 2 or whatever. At least Nicolas Cage is in there. At least there's going to be some fun. But he's done a lot of junk, and it's nice to see him still doing films like this that are, in my opinion, top tier. So, this being episode number 21, I thought we'd do something a little bit different this week, buddy, because it's 2021. It is 21. The year is 21. I thought we'd go over some of the films we've been watching this year and talk about those a little bit. It seems like a good point to do that. We're in August. We're coming into the last section of the year now, the last third. It's probably a good place to stop, take stock, look back, have a look at what we've been watching, talk about it a little bit, go over a few things, Does that sound like a good idea to you?
Sounds like a fantastic idea to me.
So what I'd like to say first is, on our Instagram account, we have been keeping tabs on what we've been watching for the first time, and we've been using the highlights feature on the Instagram to add all of these films to it. So they're separated into months. We've been doing it since January, so we've got January 2021 all the way up now to August 2021. So if you're on Instagram, you can go on More Movies For You. That's our profile there, and you can look at our highlights and you can find all the films that we've been watching for the first time. Now, funnily enough, there are 121 films that we have watched for the first time this year. So kind of like that knits together really well. But we're going to need to break these down before we go into talk about them. So what I thought we'd do first is we'd stick with the 21 and we just talk about first the films that we've been watching from this year, 2021. Is that a good place to start?
That's a great place to start.
Well, then kick us off, my friend.
Well, I'll kick us off with back in February, I watched a film called The Little Things. I thought I'd mention this because it's a film that really disappointed me.
Okay.
I saw it come up. It was Denzel Washington, Rami Malek, and Jared Leto. So when you see
those
three great
names,
actors like that,
exactly,
you kind of think, this might be good.
Yeah.
And the story was that they're like detectives in like small county America. And I thought, what an exciting concept. And I couldn't have been more disappointed, perhaps, in a film this year.
So, there we go. There's one not to watch. So obviously we've been watching the latest stuff like The Suicide Squad, which we talked about on last week's podcast. So if you want to find out what we thought of that, you can go skip one back to episode number 20, where we talked about The Suicide Squad, the music documentary or rockumentary or whatever you want to call it, Summer of Soul. I did a review for that, so you can check out the review on our website, moremovies.co.uk, or here on YouTube as a Film in 5 video. Links below in the description as always if you want to check out my review for that. I highly recommend that. I know you haven't seen it yet, and I know you love music in general and also that kind of music. You got to check that one out.
A few more from earlier in the year. I mean, of course, I watched The White Tiger, which is still my pick for film of the year.
Cool.
So far still.
Yeah. So far so good.
I did a review of that. That's on the YouTube channel and on our website. We'll put the link down below. That is really superb. And if I was to say to people, what film to watch from this year, that's still the one I'd say go and watch that. I think it's superb over on Netflix.
Yeah.
I also watched near the beginning of the year a very interesting film. We've both seen this actually. Run, Hide, Fight.
Oh, yeah, Run, Hide, Fight. I kind of forgot about that. And then when you were talking about Elephant the other week, because Elephant was one of the ones from the past that you hadn't seen before that you'd watched.
That's it.
It reminded me about that Run, Hide, Fight because it's got similar themes, even though the treatment of it is completely different. Completely
different, yeah. Obviously, the film's about basically a school shooting incident set in the modern day, and kind of.
But it's done in more of a satire way, isn't it? It's kind of like
it is
a bit more tongue in cheek and
John McClane esque kind of
meets
action.
The Breakfast Club.
Yeah, that's it. The girl going around kicking everyone's ass, kind of thing in this school shooting incident. It's quite shocking in places.
It is, yeah. I was quite. I was a bit ambivalent about it because in some ways it was a good film and it was quite good entertainment, but in other ways you think to yourself, should I be entertained by a subject like this that's still it's a major problem, especially in the States, isn't it? I mean,
I think there was
respect,
a level of respect in there though, and
it wasn't completely exploitative.
No, I think they did a pretty good job of it.
We also saw Godzilla vs. Kong, which was like a major release earlier in the summer. That came and went. I don't think we need to say too much about it. It was what it was. I loved the Mechagodzilla was in it at the end. That was kind of like, It's a pretty cool thing. We also had the Fear Street films quite recently. We talked about them in episodes 15, 16, and 17, respectively. Each different film each week. So if you want to know our thoughts about the Fear Street films, you can go back a few episodes and check out those podcasts where we talk about each of those.
Earlier in the year, I watched Cherry, which we had reacted to the trailer for.
Yeah.
With Tom Holland and Chiara Bravo. Really interesting film. He's an army veteran who's suffering from PTSD. So he gets an opioid addiction and then starts robbing banks and stuff to obviously keep up. He needs the money to get the drugs kind of thing. And
right.
His life spirals.
Yeah.
But that was a really interesting film. It was a very different, role for someone like Tom Holland, really, obviously.
So also this year, we've been watching Karen Gillan's latest action thriller, Gunpowder Milkshake. You did a great review for that, again, on the website or here on the YouTube channel, link below in the description to find out Dave's thoughts on that film. Space Jam, A New Legacy, the new one. We talked about that 2 episodes ago in episode 19 of the weekly podcast. So if you want to go and check out what we thought of that film, we talked about that at the start of that episode. There was Nobody as well with Bob Odenkirk, poor Bob, who's just had a heart attack, God bless him, and is recovering now, thank God. But that great action thriller, we talked about that in episode 13, so that's worth mentioning as well. There's a load of other films as well that were released in other years, previous years, that we've been catching up on first-time watches that we also include in this highlights reel on the Instagram that we've watched for the first time this year, but aren't necessarily from this year. So I thought we'd mention a few of those. I'll start the ball rolling by saying that I have basically caught up on a load of John Cassavetes films this year. So films like Minnie and Moskowitz, Woman Under the Influence, The Killing of a Chinese Bookie. Most recently watched Opening Night. Oh, it's like a treasure trove for me. I really love these films. If you're into cinema and movies and independent films, then John Cassavetes is the king of independent cinema. You've got to check these movies out.
What do? You go out and you hustle yourself all over the street. Small time. No dignity!
I've been trying to catch up on a lot of the kind of films I've missed. Particularly, I've got a list I follow on Letterboxd, which we're also on, which is 1,001 films to see before you die, which is, of course, taken from the books that have been released over the years. So there's plenty of films that are in that list that, there's plenty I've seen, but there's plenty that I've missed over the last decade I missed. So I hadn't seen Mud.
With
from 2012 of Matthew
McConaughey. I haven't seen that yet either.
Superb film,
right? Really
different. Matthew McConaughey, fantastic as always. I'm a big fan. Film called Monos, from 2019, which I did a review of earlier this year,
and it's a great review, folks. You got to check out Dave's review for this film. You know what though? It's because it's a foreign film, and because not a lot of people know it. We haven't really had many views on that particular video, but it's such a great review. You did a great job. I mean, I'm going to say that anyway. I'm biased, but you did a great review, and it is worth watching. So please do check it out.
It is. It's an absolutely amazing
Superb
film. A great one that we did cover earlier this year that I watched for the first time this year was, of course, Paris, Texas.
Me too. Amazing.
Harry Dean Stanton.
Amazing film.
What a film.
It's one of the best films ever made.
It is.
Simply
it is
one of the best
stunning.
films ever made.
Back in April, I checked out Nightcrawler as well from 2014.
Oh, what a film, eh?
Jake Gyllenhaal, Riz Ahmed.
Oh, it was a stonking film.
Stonking film, heavy film.
Sometimes Jake Gyllenhaal, for me, is a little bit twitchy and a little bit hit and miss, but in that he was perfect. It was that kind of maniacal role that he really gets into well.
My motto is, if you want to win the lottery, you have to make the money to buy a ticket.
One that I hadn't seen, like yourself, catching up on stuff that's been released in the last 10 years or so that you haven't had a chance to see yet. A big one for me was Doubt, with Meryl Streep, Viola Davis, and Philip Seymour Hoffman, which I thought was an absolutely brilliant drama film, one of the best I've ever seen. And I only watched that this year for the first time, so that immediately became one of my top 100 films of all time. It's fantastic. You've got to see that, mate. It's really good. If you haven't seen Doubt yet and you love good drama films, that is one. Viola Davis, just to say as well, she's not in it very much. She's only in like a portion of it, but you'll never ever forget her performance in it once you've watched it. It's one of those. She's only in it for like 10, 15 minutes, but it's like some of the best acting you'll ever see.
I finally caught up on Parasite this year, which I hadn't seen.
Brilliant.
Amazing film. Deserved the award, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Amazing comment on class structure in that one. I watched a great film, Love, Simon, from a couple of years ago, which was really great.
I don't know that one.
Basically a gay teen romance. It's a bit like a John Hughes style coming-of-age 80s film, but done really, really well. It was notable because it was like the first major Hollywood studio to do the gay teen thing. So that was really good. That's worth going to check it out.
Brilliant.
Hey, morning. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize you were masturbating.
Yeah, very funny.
Yeah, there were a few others from, going way back now that we've been getting into this year, like some of the 70s films. For example, Thunderbolt and Lightfoot from 1974, which we talked about in More Movies Weekly, episode 17. The Friends of Eddie Coyle, which is 1973, which we talked about in episode 8, which is a classic new Hollywood crime drama. We also talked about The Train from 1964 in episode number 7, which stars Burt Lancaster as Labiche.
Great film.
The French resistance guy. Great World War II film. John Frankenheimer. Hell of a good World War II movie. One of the best ones you'll see.
Beauty belongs to the man who can appreciate it.
We talked about Queen and Slim the other week as well, in episode 18, which was from 2019. Brilliant film. Brilliant film. Daniel Kaluuya.
Very powerful
really
film,
cool. We talked about License to Drive from 1988, which was in episode number 16, which is a classic 80s comedy with the two Coreys, Haim and Feldman, and Heather Graham in there as well. That was a great film, great laugh. As I say, that was in episode 16.
Look, Dean, now if there's any evidence at all that I took this car tonight, my dad's gonna slaughter me first and ask questions later, okay? What? Stop it.
Yeah, also a few others I caught up on this year. I watched Bridesmaids for the first time.
That's a funny film.
My pants.
It is funny.
Yeah.
It's like,
I think,
in a way, it's like the answer to The Hangover, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's the reason I never watched it. Originally, I think when it first came out, it was not long after The Hangover, and I thought, oh, it's just
more of the
Hangover
same
with girls, and it's going to just be a pale imitation. And then I ended up watching it and going, actually, this is...
No, there's more to it, isn't there?
It's funny. Yeah, it's a lot. It's very good.
And I got my asshole bleached too, and I love my new asshole.
So I really enjoyed that. I watched a Taika Waititi film from 2016, Hunt for the Wilder People.
I watched that too for the first time this year. What a film. So funny.
Really great.
Yeah.
Really enjoyable.
The more of his films I see, the more I really appreciate him as a fantastic talent of filmmaker.
Fantastic, yeah.
He's a great actor and everything as well, but I love his films. Jojo Rabbit, of course, was brilliant. Watched that last year. And Hunt for the Wilder People this year. I laughed from start to finish, and also had moments, poignant moments in there that capture you as well, which is what you want as well sometimes from for it to be a really good film. It needs to have that balance,
notes, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does.
Yeah,
I think he's great, really talented. Sam Neill, of course, hilarious in it.
Rookie Town, population rookie.
And in the last month, I caught up on Black Klansman, the Spike Lee film.
Brilliant.
John David Washington, Adam Driver.
It's great.
Hilarious.
I loved it. It's hilarious, and again, that's quite powerful.
But dealt with in a way where you're just sitting there laughing your arse off. Like, this is just too much.
You racist, peckerwood, redneck, inchworm, needle dick, motherfucker.
I watched Crazy Rich Asians, which was a really great film.
Yeah.
And of course, I watched Vice, which I reviewed last week on the YouTube channel. Link will be down below. And that was
great film.
Really
so there we
good.
go. I mean, there are more. Like I say, you can check out our Instagram profile at More Movies for You, and then in the highlight reels there, you'll find all the months, so you can see what we've been watching for the first time. We will continue to keep that populated as the year goes on. I dare say by the end of the year, we'll be doing a look back, a retrospective of 2021. So if this is the first time you've caught up with us, episode 21, there's another 20 episodes there where we're talking about a lot of these films. There's reviews here on the channel. There's reviews over on the website, written reviews, so you can check out moremovies.co.uk to see what we thought about these films. So there's plenty of content from us for you to catch up on if you're just seeing us for the first time. If you are a returning viewer, we just both like to say thank you very much for watching again. We really appreciate you turning up and spending half an hour with us talking about movies, because that's what we love to do. So that leaves us just enough time to tell you about what we've been doing on the website this week. So as usual, we've got our This Week in Film History article, which lists births, deaths, events, releases that have happened throughout the years this week in film history. It does what it says on the tin. Go and check out that article if that's your bag.
We also have our top 5 James Cameron films up on the website. It was his birthday this week, so we thought we'd celebrate that by putting up a little article, his top 5 films. We of course do these all the time, so there's top 5s for lots of directors up there on the website as well, if you want to check them out as well. Link will of course be in the description down below.
I have also done a review this week for a film from the early 80s, very cheesy martial arts film called Enter the Ninja, but it was one of my favourite films growing up, so there's a whole story behind that. So if you want to check out my review for Enter the Ninja, that is on the website or here on the YouTube channel. Take your pick. There's a link in the description below if you want to check that out.
And do you fancy a coffee, Greg?
I wouldn't mind a cappuccino.
Oh, cup of tea. Let's have a look. Let's see what we got.
You know, fish, chips, cup of tea.
That leads us to the point of, if you enjoy what we're doing here on the channel and would like to support us, you can jump over to buymeacoffee.com and buy us a coffee over there, link in the description down below. Or you can jump over to Patreon and subscribe to one of our packages. Again, the link is in the description down below.
Also worth saying that this week, for the first time this week on our Patreon, we have started to introduce a poll in order to ask our patrons to vote on what film we should be talking about next week. So each week we talk about a different film we've been watching. This week we have put a list of options up. There's 4 films for our patrons to choose from. They can all select one each, and the one that's the most popular we will be talking about on next week's podcast. So if you want to have a say in what we talk about here on the podcast, then jump over to Patreon, become a patron on the I think it's across all the packages, so you can subscribe to the cheapest package if you want, and then you can have a say on what we talk about on next week's podcast. Did I say that clearly enough, Dave?
I think so.
I think so. If not, just skip back and watch me say it again, and I'm sure it'll make sense.
Okay, that didn't really make sense, but you know what I'm trying to say.
And of course, follow us on social media at More Movies For You across the board. That's Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, all of that shit. And you can see silly things like the movie of the day.
What the hell's the matter with you guys? Henry Fonda, Lee J. Cobb, Ed Begley, E.G. Marshall, Jack Warden, Martin Balsam, John Fiedler, Jack Klugman, Edward Binns, Joseph Sweeney, George Voskovich, and Robert Webber. 12 Angry Men. You don't really mean you'll kill me, do you?
And there we go, Dave. That's another week. That's 21 wrapped up. 21 is done, dusted in the book. Put it neatly back away on the shelf and get ready next week for 22. Thank you very much for joining us. We both appreciate it. It's lovely to see you. And leave us a comment. Let us know what you thought of this week's episode. Dave, anything to say before we sign off?
No, just that's it. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know what you want us to check out next week. And we'll see you next week, I guess. Something like that.
Perfect.
Bye.
That's it for this video. Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. And remember to like, share and subscribe right here on YouTube. For more film reviews and articles, join us on our website moremovies.co.uk. Or join us on social media at More Movies For You. That's on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all across the board. You know the score. If you enjoy our content, please consider supporting us at buymeacoffee.com or join us on patreon.com. Links in the description down below. And for more filmtastic content, click one of the buttons on screen now.